I am not advising anybody to go home. We intend to maintain our army in Washington regardless of who goes home.
President Hoover and other people kept saying, why can't we drive them home? A lot of these people didn't have a home.
It was pretty clear to everybody that they could not remain. But no one knew how to get rid of them, and no one wanted violence.
On July 16th, the last day Congress was in session, Washington was on edge. Thousands of angry veterans surrounded the Capitol. Near midnight, the 72nd Congress adjourned. Congressmen left through back doors and underground tunnels to avoid confrontations. The situation had come to a head. The president ordered the evacuation of the veterans from downtown Washington. By police count, there were still 11,698 marchers and their families in Washington. Midway between the White House and the Capitol stood a row of half-demolished buildings where hundreds of marchers were living. On the morning of July 28th, the wheels were in motion to evict them. Waters urged his men to cooperate. Then someone began to throw bricks at the police.
Glassford and several police officers run to the area. 2 cops are grabbed. 1 cop pulls out a gun and he fires. Another cop turns and he fires a shot.
1 veteran was dead and another lay dying.
Now there's been bloodshed. Now you bring in the troops.
When MacArthur moved his troops to the affected area, he knew exactly what he was going to do. And he adorned himself in his dress uniform along with his major aide, Dwight D. Eisenhower.
The force stepped off at 4:30 p.m. More than 200 cavalrymen spread out across Constitution and Pennsylvania avenues. Behind them came 400 infantrymen, followed up by tanks and armored vehicles.
I was about 7 years old at the time, and the troops were out on Pennsylvania Avenue. I was scared, and my dad kept saying, nothing's going to happen.
The cavalrymen, one of whom is Major Patton, have got their sabers out.
The soldiers donned gas masks and without warning began hurling gas grenades at the veterans. The troops advanced, some jabbing with bayonets.
Tear gas was just burning my face. I was trailing behind my dad and he kept hollering, come on boy, come on boy.
Marchers were choking from the gas, just like the battlefields in France.
And so they're being forced out of their shacks by smoke bombs and tear gas, hurled by the troops who have been called out by the President of the United States.
Chief Glassford stood by helplessly.
The veterans did not believe the country for which they had fought would ignore the plight into which the Depression had placed them. Many did not believe that United States troops would take the field against them.
By early evening, most of the marchers had been driven across a drawbridge that led to their main camp.
The president does not want MacArthur to cross the bridge, and MacArthur disregards the order. Eisenhower later says that he saw this happen. MacArthur says, I cannot bother with pieces of paper during a military operation. And so he crosses the bridge.
All through the camp were scenes of panic.
My dad says, let's get the hell out of here. The soldiers are going to kill us.
Then troops began to set fire to their wooden shacks. One reporter wrote, the blaze was so big it lit the whole sky. A nightmare come to life. The president looked out a window of the White House in the direction of the fire, then retired for the night.
And the roaring flames sound the death knell to the fantastic bonus army that ends so disastrously in the shadow of the capital of the United States of America.
Wow. Can you imagine World War II soldiers practicing on World War I veterans? prior to defeating Hitler. 4 troops of cavalry, 4 companies of infantry, a machine gun squadron, and tanks were assembled to oust the Bonus Army. General Douglas MacArthur was in charge of the operations. Major Dwight Eisenhower, his aide, George Patton, one of the officers. So as the film clip revealed, MacArthur led his troops down Pennsylvania Avenue and used tear gas to clear the veterans out of old buildings and set the buildings on fire. Then MacArthur led the army across the bridge to Anacostia, and there the soldiers destroyed the entire encampment. So Washington was on fire, and it was all over. 2 veterans had been shot to death, and an 11-week-old baby had died, and an 8-year-old boy was blinded by gas. 2 police had fractured skulls, and 1,000 veterans were injured by the gas. So, again, the hard times of the Depression and the inaction of the government to help the people became exacerbated by the dispersal of war veterans. And the majority of these war veterans were immigrants or children of immigrants. And in the election of November 1932, Democratic Party candidate Franklin Delano Roosevelt is going to defeat Herbert Hoover overwhelmingly, one of the most lopsided defeats in presidential elections. And when FDR took office, he began a program of reform legislation which became famous in what we know now as the New Deal. The Roosevelt reforms went far beyond previous legislation.